I turn my trousers inside out again. So as you can see, there's the wee notches here for where the pocket goes in. So see, there's a wee notch there. So it's about 2 centimeters up from where the French seam stops. So I'm going to stitch from using the line that I've already got for the French seam, stitch up so it's a 2 centimeter seam allowance here, 2 centimeters up to the notch, and stop and do a baby back tack. And then I'm going to go all the way up here to the next notch, which is there, and I'm going to do a 2 centimeter seam allowance all the way up to the top. So I'll just do that first. So making sure my edges are lined up, straight over the stitching for the French seam, and back tacking, stopping where that first notch is, and then going all the way up to the top, lining my top edges up. Going to where my notch is and lining up, so 2 centimeter seam allowance, back tack there, and then all the way up to the top of my garment. So basically I'm just going to go quickly press this open. Okay, so as you can see, that's now pressed open, and I've got my pocket here with my my seam allowance there. So that's basically, if you open that up and you place that open seam with that open seam, that gives you the seams that you're going to sew together. So you're going to match up the notches on the pocket here with the notches that are on your pattern piece. Now obviously, again, yours is going to have that extra seam allowance, but I'm going to have to line mine up 1 centimeter away from that edge, which is annoying, but oh well. So I'm matching up my notches at the side, notch there and notch there, and I'm just going to making sure that this seam allowance and this seam allowance are out the way and not captured in this seam. So this seam and this seam on the other side. So these two are going to get sewn together, but I'm going to sew this side together first. So again, I'm just going to match up my notches, and you're basically wanting to make this seam stitch run parallel to this, or run alongside this seam here, so all the way down and capturing that seam down there. So I'm just going to do that first, and that's one side done. So you can see I've just stitched along that, and you're just going to flip it all over, and you can see I've not caught any of the stitch lines on this side. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing for this one now. So as you can see, I've attached them in at both sides there. So that should be now, when I turn it right way up, our pocket. So the same as in the first video, what I'm going to do is just do a wee top stitch on the front side, just to make sure that that edge sits nice and flat. So what I've done now is I've done my top stitching in my pocket. I went over that in the last video, so I just figured you didn't need to see it again. So that's the pocket in completely. Now we just need to deal with the raw edges on the inside. So whilst I was pressing that to make that sit nice and flat, I also on the inside, now again, my 1 centimeter seam allowance, you can still see this raw edge here, so I'm going to need to interface that before I finish, but yours will fold over nice and neatly. So what I've done is with the raw edges, I've pressed the seam over on itself, so that on the inside now you've got this nice edge of clean non-frayed edging. So I've pressed that kind of frayed edge in on itself all the way down, and the only bits you need to kind of watch out for are the bits that kind of at the top and the bottom of the pocket. So you'll see where the French seam starts and stops, is you're going to need to, that's still frayed. So any edge that's running across the way, you just need to turn it up on itself, so that is then going to be captured in the stitch that I'm about to do. And basically what I'm going to do is run a top stitch right the way through to the outside layer, all the way down the side and in a V shape down there, and then flipping the pocket to that side, I'm going to do a top stitch all the way up this side as well, and that'll make sure that all those frayed edges are captured in the inside, and again, no need to overlock it. So as you can now see, I have inserted in my pocket, and you can see that there is a top edge stitch all the way up to the very top of my trouser, and that's the way the pocket should look from the outside. And then on the inside, again, yours will all have nicely folded, and I'm going to need to put a wee bit of interlining here, but all the top edge stitches, there's no raw edges. I'm going to trim away some of the wee, again, the wee fluffy bits, but that's the way that your pocket should look on the inside. And so now what I'm going to do is move on to the side seam of your top. This one, again, it's the only one that's a wee bit different just because of the vent at the side. Now, at the side seams of your top, what I've done is I've extended the 3cm seam allowance that was originally allowed for the vent to come out with the overlock seam, and I've just extended it all the way up to the top. So basically what you're going to do is do a stitch all the way from the underarm here, 3cm seam allowance all the way down to where the notch is, which is just down here. So you're going to do that, and then you're going to press it open. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this open and do, press it so that the seam allowance goes all the way down to the hem at the bottom, and do the same thing that what I did with the pocket. So I'm going to turn the raw edges in on themselves like that, press it like that, so that then I can come back and top stitch that down so that the vent is finished nice and neatly, but again, you don't need your overlocker. Okay, so as you can see, I have pressed the seams open and then folded them in on themselves so that then this vent has got a nice finishing to it. And now what I'm going to do is just do the top stitch, and then I'm just going to basically finish everything. Now the French seams, remember, it's right sides, the wrong sides together first and then turning them in on themselves. Obviously with any of the seams that are not French seams, you're doing still right sides together first, just so that you're not getting all twisted. So I'm going to do insertion of the sleeve, I'm going to do the hems of the top and the hem of the trousers, and also insert my other pocket. And I will come back to you with how to insert your waistband. Okay, so then again I would give that a wee press, but that's how you would finish it. And then again on the outside you've got this nice neat row of stitching which then opens up into the vent quite neatly. Okay, so I'm going to go do all the other sewing and yeah, get back to you with the waistband. Okay, so now we're moving on to our finishes, which includes the facing and the waistband. Now what I've done is, you can see I've interfaced the facing like I did in the first video, except what I've done is I've pressed away a 0.5 seam allowance around the outside of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to join the shoulder seams together of the two facings, and then I'm going to do a running stitch, a top stitch all the way around the edge, just to make sure that that edge stays neat and out of the way. And then I'm going to insert the facing exactly the same way as we did in the first video. Now with the waistband, it's a wee bit different. So what I've done is I've turned the trousers inside out so that the wrong way is facing out. And I have sewn my 1 centimetre seam allowance on my elastic and attached that to the centre back of my trouser. Now what I've done now is I've done the matching it up half and half again to get the points for the side seam and the front, and I've pinned it so that the elastic is coming down onto the right side of the fabric, so you can see that that's the right side in there, so that's the seam that's been it's on the outside of the fabric, and I've pinned the elastic 1 centimetre down from the raw edge up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch all the way around, 1 centimetre down all the way around, again stretching the elastic as it goes through the machine, so that that is then attached 1 centimetre down from the edge of the trouser, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do after that. Right, so that's my facing in and top stitched with a 3cm allowance around it, and I've pressed it, but I need to give the whole thing a press again. And you can see on the inside there I've top stitched that edge, so that's nice and neat. Obviously you do still have the raw edge on the inside, but because it's interfaced, hopefully that won't fray too much, but that's basically how you do your facing. And then also I've got your waistband here, so I've stitched the elastic in, stretching it as I go, and as you can see I've got a 1cm seam allowance all the way along, and there's a 1cm seam allowance onto the elastic. Now I did find it was a wee bit difficult to put it in with just the 4 pins, so I'd maybe put you know how I said like halved it and then halved it again, I would maybe do another half just so you've got intermediary pins when you're putting it through. And when you're putting it through the machine you need to have one hand behind pulling it and one hand in front pulling it, so that the elastic is stretched going through, otherwise it just kind of jumps back and forth. So anyway, so I've done this, so as you can see that's the inside of my trouser there, and so all the raw edges are to the inside. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this once and then roll this twice, so that I've now got an edge like that on the inside. And again I'm going to put a pin in at each seam, centre back, centre front and the side seams. And again, stretching this, I'm going to do a top stitch all the way through the layers, making sure that that top rolled edge, see that bit where the elastic rolls over, that's nice and tight to the elastic, so it's a nice neat edge on the top. And I'm going to do the top stitch down at the bottom here, so that when I'm done, hopefully it'll look nice and neat. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so as you can see on the inside, I've now done that top edge stitch, catching both the fabric and the elastic in it, stretching it nice and tight and making sure that that top edge is nice and tight when I'm sewing round. So now all I'm going to do is, I'm not going to bother pressing that or anything. I'm just going to press the whole garment, check for loose threads inside and out, and pop it on the mannequin for you guys to see. So this is the final result. I've not done that good a job at pressing this out, but I was in a rush, so we'll just have to deal with it. So yep, facings sitting nice and flat, pockets are in, she's flashing her bum, but that's okay. So yeah, any questions, just let me know, but good luck, happy sewing.